Thank you. Your microphone's off, Mr. Chair. Anyhow, appreciate the opportunity to come before you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Senator Dan Innes from Bradford, New Hampshire, representing District 7, here to introduce Senate Bill 479, a bill which would enable the existing alternative treatment centers to convert to a for-profit business structure in the state of New Hampshire. Similar legislation has been before the House and the Senate numerous times over the past several sessions, and you'll see a separate bill, House Bill 54, at some point this session as well. And you're all familiar with my background in business and economics, and my interest in this issue is viewed in part through that lens. By changing to a for-profit structure, it would enable a reduction in the operating costs for existing New Hampshire manufacturers. The ATCs are New Hampshire businesses, and they operate just like any other business in our state that produces and sells products to consumers. And you might be wondering, well, why would costs go down? Well, the requirement that these companies remain nonprofit inhibits their ability to access lower cost capital. Lenders see nonprofits as higher risk clients, and as a result, they charge a higher interest rate to those nonprofits. Typically, when manufacturers turn to the legislature to help address these type of challenges, we're ready to help. So the nonprofit structure really has limited ATC's ability to operate optimally, forcing them to rely on those high interest loans that I just mentioned. And that reduces their ability to invest in infrastructure upgrades, to grow their business, to serve more clients. And that's really also constrained their ability to lower prices more expeditiously, to expand their services, and in fact, to improve efficiency. And since they're not recognized as nonprofits by the IRS, the benefit of being a nonprofit in New Hampshire is extremely limited and is really dramatically outweighed by the increase in costs, particularly those costs of capital. And interest rates are, after all, a representation of the cost of money. And the higher that cost of money, the higher rate of return is needed on sales to pay that debt. So it is a significant impediment to growth in these businesses. There's also an impact on cost of patients who participate in the therapeutic cannabis program. Like New Hampshire, many other states with medical cannabis programs initially required nonprofit status for businesses. Nearly all of these states have since eliminated this requirement because they came to understand it was actually an obstacle to affordability, something we're hearing a lot about. And as these businesses are forced to borrow money using that higher cost lending, those costs are passed along to who? The consumers. Ideally, the cost savings from allowing these businesses to access traditional markets for capital or investment would help to lower those retail prices. In conclusion, I believe that Senate Bill 479 is a reasonable step in helping existing New Hampshire businesses and their consumers. I'm happy to answer some questions, but there are also members of ATCs here who have experiences dealing with these challenges and who can also answer your questions.
I'm going to stick with you, Senator. You're a commodity, I know.
All right.
So, and I didn't probably listen as intently as I should have. I was reading things up here. But initially, 10 years ago, the ATCs promised us they were never going to come to want to operate for profit, and because that was going to give them an unfair advantage because we gave them these dispensaries, and other people now are so far behind and setting up, getting customers, organizing, have a product line. So we took it as, okay, these guys are never going to do it because they promised us they never would. So that's one part. I like multi-parts. Maybe you'll forget some of the questions. So they promised us that. Well, isn't part of the problem with your bank loan interest rate the problem that the product that they're selling, and hasn't been recognized by banks, and a lot of banks just never wanted to deal with this product. So are you going to get good interest rates now because it's been rescheduled federally? Is that going to help you get bank loans? Will banks in New Hampshire readily give you guys loans? And I'm not aware of that. And we'll stop for a while.
All right, I will take the first part first. I can't really speak to what was said a decade ago, Senator. I wish that I could, but I will say this. I think the landscape has changed significantly from 10 years ago, with every single state around us permitting recreational cannabis use. Okay. And I would much prefer that our patients who need therapeutic cannabis stay in our state with therapeutic cannabis providers who have perhaps a level of expertise around this that exceeds what our residents would find by driving into another state to a recreational store. So I think it makes an awful lot of sense to try to help them there, to reduce their costs so it's not more expensive to buy it in New Hampshire through a reputable agent than it is to go to another state. So that to me is a major issue. I want them to be here working with our providers, getting the guidance they need in the way that they use the product. As for interest rates and bank loans and so on, I'm going to let the ATCs cover that. I think they're in a much better position to address those nuances than I.
At the moment, Senator, just one more question. With marijuana not being a legal product for general sale in New Hampshire, are you ever going to be able to approach the costs of other states? We'll just say Massachusetts. They have such distribution, such network, they have such a higher volume of stuff. I don't know how you'd ever catch up to them at the moment.
Well, they also have competition, which does further, force down prices. I don't know. It would be speculative for me to answer that, but I do think if we could have a cost that's reasonably close, even if it's slightly higher, it reduces travel time, it reduces travel expense. I think we'd be able to maintain a lot of that business for our ATCs. And again, get these folks the guidance and support they need from experts when they make these purchases and use the product.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions? Senator Carson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Senator.
Good afternoon.
The question I have, it really is, has anybody here in the State House, in government, have they actually audited the financials of the cannabis companies to verify if their requested need for profit status is financially necessary?
Well, I don't want to speculate too much here, but I would say this, they're not state agencies or entities necessarily. So I'm not sure why we would audit them unless there's a reporting requirement around that. And if there is, I'm not familiar with it.
May I follow up?
Yes, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding, we created them here and that they should have audits done of their business because we created this little carve out for them.
Yes.
So if they need to go from a nonprofit status to a profit status, I think there should be some information as to why. Is it because they're not making enough money to survive? And did we, quite frankly, Senator, did we give them too many? Because a few years ago, they wanted to expand them because people were complaining. We started out with just a few ATCs and people were complaining that they had to drive a long way to get them.
Right.
So did we actually overbuild these businesses and they're competing with each other and they're just not financially viable?
I don't know, but again, there are folks here from the alternative treatment centers who I know can answer those questions very effectively, better than I. Yes,
thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator.
We're all set. Thank you, Senator,
all right,
for your
thank
testimony today. Enjoy your next committee. Keenan Blum. Good afternoon, sir. How you doing today? Do you get your shovel ready? No. Good. Send your kids over to my house.
Thank you for your time. Good afternoon, esteemed senators. My name is Keenan Blum, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today in support of SB 479. I am currently the president and CEO of Granite Leaf Cannabis, formerly Prime ATC, and I've been employed by the company in some capacity since before we opened our doors and began serving patients about 9.5 years ago. Granite Leaf is one of 3 companies that are licensed to operate alternative treatment centers in New Hampshire, and our sole focus is serving patients in the Granite State. When we first opened in 2016, I spent most of my time working directly with patients at our dispensary in Merrimack, so I've seen the positive impacts of therapeutic cannabis program firsthand and what the care we provide can do. Our nonprofit board elevated me to the position of president and CEO nearly 5 years ago. I am currently one of 44 current employees that work for the company. Every one of us live in New Hampshire. We operate 3 licensed facilities, a cultivation and manufacturing facility in Peterborough, and 2 dispensaries, one nearby in Chichester and one in Merrimack, New Hampshire. Every day, our team comes to work and tries to do the best we can of serving patients within the context of New Hampshire's law and regulations. We understand that patients are relying on us to provide high-quality products, and since therapeutic cannabis is not covered by insurance, they are counting on us to provide these products at affordable prices, along with educational services. I am here today in support of SB 479 because the current nonprofit requirement does not serve the interest of patients. Although the intention of the requirement was positive, in practice, it has only contributed to higher costs for ATCs due to a structural mismatch between state and federal law. Although ATCs are required to operate as a nonprofit, we are not recognized as a nonprofit at the federal level. And as a manufacturing and dispensing business, we do not fit any traditional nonprofit model. As a result, we receive none of the funding mechanisms that typically make nonprofit models viable. As a result, we do not receive or qualify for donations, grants, endowments, or subsidies. We pay full federal taxes and cannot even write off the donations that we regularly provide to local charities. Most importantly, we cannot issue equity or ownership and cannot acquire secured loans. In practice, this means we operate entirely on savings from operating revenue at this point versus unsecured loans originally at high interest rates. And we incur substantial regulatory compliance and capital costs without access to the basic financial tools that all other structurally similar or similarly regulated businesses rely on to manage those costs efficiently. One of the clearest examples is financing. Since there is no ownership of our company, we are limited almost entirely to relying on unsecured high-interest loans. Over the years, we have never been able to secure significant financing at less than 15% interest. That is not a market choice. It is a consequence of the statutory structure we're required to operate within. These higher financing costs do not disappear and have affected patients. They are embedded in the cost of operations and ultimately in the prices that patients pay. Soon I'll be testifying on SB 468, which would potentially allow us to operate one greenhouse. I bring this up to illustrate the structural challenge that we face and provide an example. Our request to be able to cultivate in the greenhouse is about replacing high-cost inputs with lower-cost inputs. However, building a greenhouse would require significant capital expenditure and substantial lead time before it can be expected to produce the products that we can provide at a lower cost to patients. Under our current nonprofit structure, we can't do so except with saved funds after taxes and fees. If we can't do so with saved funds after taxes and fees, which we certainly couldn't do originally, financing such a project will result in 6 figures of interest before a single product reaches a patient, repeating the challenges we've faced since our creation. The cost would inevitably be passed on to the people this program is meant to serve, at a detriment of New Hampshire patients and residents. This is not a regulatory issue. It's a financing issue created by a statutory structure that does not align with how the program and business actually operates. If we were any other type of business, we could either obtain a secured loan at a reasonable rate or sell equity in the business to raise capital. The nonprofit requirement also creates situations where responsibility exists without ownership or authority. As the Granite Leaf president, I'm accountable for compliance, safety, continuity, and quality of services. Yet the law restricts our ability to secure capital in ways that would reduce that risk and cost. In certain instances, I've gone as far as to provide personal guarantees on contracts so that the company could receive small loans at more reasonable interest rates. Attorneys and our CPA have advised me not to do this, and it would certainly be irresponsible and impossible for me to do that at a larger level. I hope you can see that this is not a sustainable governance model for our business. SB 479 does not reduce oversight, it does not loosen regulations, or change the mission of the program in any way. It simply allows providers to operate under a structure that matches economic reality while remaining subject to the same rigorous state controls. Allowing conversion to for-profit status would enable access to lower cost secured financing, reduce structural inefficiencies that inflate patient costs, and make it possible for ATCs to fulfill our mission of service to patients more effectively. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So right now, I think, do you remember Senator Carson's question? Are you guys sustainable? Are there audits that have gone on? If you didn't get this, are you guys going to go under, or?
So that's a bit speculative, I will say, given the realities of our situation. What I can say is that the main complaint we get from patients, and consistently are told that patients choose to go to other states, use the black market, and get services from people who do not provide necessarily safe product or any education to go with it that provides a good outcome for them. We can't compete with those others in our current structure. And as we are not able to access capital in a normal, traditional way, it continues to make it harder for us to compete and could result in us becoming non-viable in the long run. Currently we are, but only because we have to keep costs up in order to retain education, retain the services we provide, and provide quality products.
Just would a mass legalized ounce of marijuana, if you went to a regular, not an ATC, but a regular shop down there, is that substantially cheaper than you're going to be able to provide even if we give you this and you can get cheaper money?
So I would say that it is, and it depends on, so the answer depends on things like the greenhouse bill that we'll talk about next. There are a lot of allowances in every state around us that we are currently not allowed to do. With those things combined, I think we could get close, at least within enough margins that the education and services would make up for that and have patients come to us. Okay. Right now, the price is less than a third of it that it was in Massachusetts when they opened. And as a result, it is extremely low there, but they also do not provide educational services or the same quality of products or the same therapeutic products. There are not, we hire full-time educational staff that are available for them, which is not available anywhere around us.
Senator Reardon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. As I read this bill, and I'm listening to you, and I understand the quality of service that you provide to New Hampshire consumers, this bill is nothing about how you grow anything, how you regulate anything, how you sell anything, what you give for education. It's about the kind of business entity that you are. That's the only thing we're changing in law, is the structure of your business entity under the Corporate Act of the state of New Hampshire. Is that correct?
Exactly. It would simply allow us to restructure the business as we don't receive any benefits from our current nonprofit status.
Follow up. So if you are going to, there are banks I know that will finance these operations. If you go to one of those banks, they're going to require your financials. They're going to require you to submit your financials every year. They're going to review and underwrite the loan based on all of that. And you are fully prepared to do that, to produce your books for them.
Absolutely. We track every single thing we do very carefully and feel very comfortable that there's no waste or other, inappropriate actions within our financials whatsoever.
Great, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you, sir.
Sue Hamala. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. For the record, I'm Sue Hamola from Smart Approaches to Marijuana, the New Hampshire chapter. I wanted to say SAM New Hampshire opposes this bill, and the reason we do is for 4 reasons. Again, the original intent of the program was to provide a compassionate solution to those who traditional medicines was not ameliorating their medical conditions, while also balancing the integrity of the program with the fact that the state is deciding to flout federal law and sell a Schedule I drug. So the ATCs, I heard they were like, somebody had mentioned, the sponsor had mentioned, it's just like any other business, but they're not like any other business. New Hampshire has given them sole source contracting to provide a federally legal drug to citizens. That is a whole different ball of wax. That's a whole different ball of wax with banks. It's a whole different ball of wax with everything. One of the things that I understand the need for bringing down the price of product, but one of the things that I think is very important, and Senator Carson had touched upon this, before the Senate makes any decisions, it should have the ability to look in the books of the ATCs, of the sole source companies that they are allowing with no competition to operate in the state of New Hampshire. You should have that ability to go look at the books and do due diligence and make sure that the need is there for that. Third, the proposed Schedule III changes are not implemented. They're not completed. That it was an executive order. It still has to go through FDA and DEA rulemaking processes. But there is an emphasis to kind of get this underway and get going. We don't know what those changes are going to look like. There is one thing that people aren't realizing is if this goes to Schedule III and our federal government actually takes that seriously, then a Schedule III drug is something akin to Tylenol with codeine. And it has to be prescribed by a doctor. Its dosing has to be done by or a licensed provider. Its dosing has to be appropriate. There's all kinds of things. If this goes to a Schedule III and the federal government, again, decides to take it seriously, it could upend and change how all states are doing medical marijuana. So I don't think that any changes should be made until we can understand what Schedule III really means. And then lastly, is we really have the opportunity to make the New Hampshire medical marijuana program a national leader in how we have integrity in the program and how we also educate our card holders. And there's so many ways that we can build upon what we have already tried to start with integrity. But adding in for-profit corporatism never gets us there. It just never gets us there. All of a sudden, then you have businesses that have protection of the state government. And the one thing that they also have is now you have those businesses are not beholden to the state, they're beholden to their investors. That's a whole different ball of wax. So that's all I have. Is there any questions I can answer? Thank you.
Thank you. And do you have testimony that you're going to turn in? Or?
Yes, sir. I already uploaded it.
Okay, thank you. I got to wear those glasses. I think it's Nathaniel Goslin? Great, okay. And you said you support, but you didn't check off speaking, but you're walking down, so.
Oh, well, I filled out another form.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, you're on the second form. Okay, I didn't know we had to.
Shall I be up next?
You are up next. You're the next contestant.
I'm really hoping to win that trip to Disneyland.
That would be a good thing. A fun thing anyways.
Okay, my name is Nathaniel Gurian. I am involved in the cannabis industry on a number of different levels, but I'm speaking to you here as the CEO and founder of a company called FinCan, which for over 10 years has pioneered cannabis banking, lending, financial services, and so on. And so I present myself as a subject matter expert on cannabis finance and banking and so on. The only comment, other than perhaps if you had some questions, that I'll make with regard to this bill is that there are sufficient, financing and opportunities for raising capital in this industry, but it is very challenging. Companies such as our existing ATCs have enough runway to make a reasonable presentation to private commercial finance companies as well as banks, and a number of these banks are doing lending, but it's still a challenging sector. It's considered a high-risk sector, and there's a lot of pressure on interest rates to be relatively high. Right now, we're working on an acquisition deal with a Massachusetts company that's looking to acquire some cannabis assets in Rhode Island for, with a principal ask of $20 million. In this industry, there's a significant amount of a shortage of liquidity for, especially deals like this. However, the ATCs are not likely to be looking for numbers like that. But I will say that on top of the higher risk and high regulation that companies are subjected to that operate for profit, having a nonprofit structure without stockholders and a lot of the other normal features of a for-profit company, that's another layer of pressure on availability of liquidity and financing and interest rates. It's arguable that the ATCs could qualify for financing in the low single digits, 9%, 10%, something like that, rather than traditionally 15% or more if they did not have this additional layer of restriction upon them.
So Nathan, did you say that they are lending to you at the 15% rate, right? Are they
Well,
lending to you
15%
now?
is kind of a.
But banks are lending to you so you can make weekly payroll and stuff. Are
Again,
they lending to you at all?
I'm sorry, I don't have a cannabis licensed operation.
Oh, okay.
Okay, my company specializes in providing access to financial services. So I'm not actually a licensee. I have the experience of a number of clients who have sought financing, but we haven't gotten it ourselves. I mean, I will say, for example, we advised the $20 million Massachusetts client yesterday that he should expect, if he's successful, that he may have to pay 20%. And that's a reasonably large transaction, and yet it's 20% is what he may have to expect just because of the the size and the risk and so on.
4 million's a lot of money?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming in today. Does anyone else wish to testify on 479? Seeing none, we'll end the hearing. Are you like the fill-in quarterback on Sunday? Or is it your bill? It's your bill. Okay, I'll get that.
It's me.
Can you pass these down? I'll just get them out of my way. Thank you.
I don't think the Patriots want me as a quarterback on Sunday.
I'll wear the glasses more. Yeah, I got seeing the wrong number without them. No, I got some with me. Senator Pearl, I'm sorry to slow you down. Good afternoon. Tell me about Senate Bill 468. The hearing started.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Senator Howard Pearl. I'm here and I represent District 17 and I live in the beautiful town of Loudon. I'm here today to introduce Senate Bill 468. This bill would allow each alternative treatment center to operate one greenhouse and subject to strict regulations and restrictions. The goal of the bill is to reduce the ATC's energy costs, which will enable them to make therapeutic cannabis more affordable. This is important because our state's therapeutic cannabis program currently serves more than 17,000 registered patients, and the number one complaint expressed by patients is affordability, as you heard on the last bill. Therapeutic cannabis is not covered by insurance, and many patients report that they have difficulty paying for it out of pocket. If patients are unable to afford therapeutic cannabis at New Hampshire dispensaries, they are more likely to obtain their cannabis from unregulated sources or from dispensaries in other states. Currently, New Hampshire's ATCs are only allowed to cultivate cannabis indoors, and this puts them at a significant disadvantage in relation to cannabis businesses in neighboring states. Indoor cultivation is the most expensive way to grow cannabis because it requires large amounts of electricity for high-intensity lighting and temperature control. If this bill becomes law, ATCs would be able to utilize natural sunlight, enabling them to produce some of their products more efficiently. Excuse me. Our neighboring states all allow cannabis to be cultivated in greenhouses, and this has contributed to prices being substantially lower in those states. As compared to secure cultivation facilities, there have been no reports of unregulated greenhouses leading to any significant problems in our neighboring states. When previous versions of this bill were being considered, some concerns were expressed that the bill may not contain adequate safeguards. I guess I would say in response, Senate Bill 468 requires specific language to ensure that rules will be written that are specific to the operation of a greenhouse, including rules regarding location and security. These rules would be in addition to the strict regulations that apply to existing cultivation locations. For example, ATCs are already required to maintain robust security systems, including video cameras, recording continuously in all areas that may contain cannabis, and these requirements would also apply to the greenhouse areas. Additionally, Senate Bill 468 would require ATCs to propose detailed plans to reduce energy costs and lower prices before they receive approval. And it would require them to include details on energy cost savings and impacts on prices in their annual reports. Previous bills on the subject have enjoyed broad support and have come close to becoming law. Last year, a similar bill passed the other chamber in a voice vote on the consent calendar, and in 2024, another bill passed both chambers but was vetoed by the governor. The bill before you today has been rewritten to address concerns that were raised in previous years, and today it is ready for prime time. So let's move forward with this relatively minor change and allow each ATC to operate one well-regulated greenhouse. And I am available for questions if you have any.
Thank you, Senator Pearl. Seeing none, you're all set.
Thank you.
Could you stop in my office, grab any pair of glasses in the top drawer? Okay. Okay. I should wear them more. Thank you. Yeah, top drawer. Thank you, sir. Sue Harmala, come on back down. Afternoon.
Good afternoon. For the record, Sue Hamola, representing SAM New Hampshire. SAM New Hampshire does not support this bill for a few reasons. One of the reasons is that it was vetoed previously for security reasons, for security concerns. Right now, what you'd be doing is you'd be passing the bill where it has a promise that we're going to outline better security requirements later, but you would still be passing that bill before you understand what those security requirements for the greenhouses will be. One of the problems that I actually have a real issue with in the bill is if you look at the language, there's a section actually where it says that the department shall, in conjunction with the local governing body of the town or city where the additional cultivation location would be located, solicit input from qualifying patients, designated caregivers, and residents of that town or city. The concern that I have with this is that nowhere in this language does it say we're going to solicit input from law enforcement, we're going to solicit input from doctors or addiction specialists. They're saying that basically we're going to allow those 17,000 card holders to be notified when there's a cultivation site going into a town, and they could, quite frankly, descend upon that town during one of their select board meetings and give them all kinds of grief about how much they need this greenhouse because it will lower prices. It seems like state-sanctioned lobbying, to be honest with you. So however you decide to move forward, I would take a very close look at that, soliciting input for qualified patients. If a greenhouse is going into a town, it really should be between the town and its citizens and whatever that entails. That's all I have. Thank you.
Which line are you on there, Sue?
Sorry, sir.
What line were you on? The solicitation. 20. Okay, I get you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I didn't have it ID'd.
No. It's good.
Okay.
I didn't have the glasses on. I'm good now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Nathaniel, do you want to go again? You didn't check off if you wanted to speak or not. Okay, thank you. Bob Rimmel. Again, I know if you support it, but oh no, you do want to speak. Okay, yep, thank you. Come on down. Good afternoon, sir. How you doing?
Yeah, my name is Bob Rimmel. I'm the president, the owner, the founder of Rimmel Greenhouse Systems out of Hooksett, New Hampshire. And one of our market segments that we sell into is the cannabis business. We basically design and build commercial greenhouses around the entire country, including Alaska and Hawaii. Throughout my time running the company, I've been to all of the states that have legalized it for both recreational use and medical use. I know what works and what doesn't work. I've seen successes and failures. A greenhouse is a controlled environment where you harness the sun's energy to grow a plant. The operations that I've seen around the country are very secure with fencing, cameras. All of the regulations are put into place to safeguard the community and the owner of these operations. Right now, I see New Hampshire dispensaries. There's quite an unsustainable business model, and it's very difficult, especially when the dispensaries have competition from Vermont, Maine, and Massachusetts. It's lower cost. It's really easy to drive not that far to go to these out-of-state dispensaries and buy your cannabis. And there also are more varieties that you can choose from because there's greater flexibility in how you can grow and what you can grow. So I support the bill. I think Senator Pearl summed it up very clearly, the benefits of using a greenhouse and allowing dispensaries to grow in a greenhouse. And if anybody, once I leave, if anybody outside of here has any questions, feel free to reach out and contact me, email me, call me, and I'd be happy to serve on a subcommittee if that's even necessary. That's all I have to say. And do you have any questions?
Seeing none, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Dr. Jerry Nurk.
Thank you very much, Senator Gannon. And I'm Jerry Knurk, and I serve as the chair of the Therapeutic Cannabis Medical Oversight Board in New Hampshire. And that board is statutorily charged with the medical oversight of the New Hampshire Therapeutic Cannabis Program. It's composed of 10 medical providers representing different medical specialties, a therapeutic cannabis patient, the medical director of DHHS, and a clinical representative from an ATC. TCMOB voted to support SB 468. As stated, the bill will allow ATCs to grow cannabis in greenhouses in order to reduce energy costs and provide lower prices for our certified patients. SB 468 is quite similar to HB 301 from 2025. HB 301 passed in the House OTPA on a voice vote, but it died on the table in the Senate. Indoor cultivation, as you've already heard, and as is currently required, significantly increases the cost of production secondary to the electricity needed for sufficient lighting and heat to obtain good plant growth. Growing in a greenhouse will allow the use of sunlight, which will significantly diminish the cost. And large-scale greenhouse production of crops is very economically feasible. Some of you may have seen the recent piece in New Hampshire Chronicle about the North Country Growers' large greenhouse production facility up in Berlin, which is doing very well. They're growing lettuce and so on. They're not growing cannabis. But in any case, the principle is very much the same. And as a home gardener, I have a greenhouse, and I produce greens and other crops year-round in this greenhouse without having to use artificial light. We've had a lot of feedback from patients, including having a listening session a couple of years ago. And again, the major complaint and the major problem they have is the high cost of the product. This would clearly enable lower cost production and therefore lower cost for the patients. Now, the thing is, SB 468 does differ from HB 301, but it differs in really good ways. It differs by being much more explicit in clarifying the rulemaking for placement and operation of greenhouses than last year's version. There would be no loosening of security if SB 468 were passed. TCMOB did vote 7-0 to support SB 468 with one abstention. And I'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Yes, Senator Ochoa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Dr. Knirk, the Honorable Dr. Knirk. You mentioned in your testimony listening sessions that you had with patients and providers, or just patients?
So these were patients who were qualifying patients for the therapeutic cannabis program, and we publicized this so they could basically come in and complain about anything and everything.
Just patients, not providers. May I follow up?
Yes.
Thank you. So in the listening sessions, we've heard some testimony that it's very easy to cross over to Vermont and Maine and Massachusetts and kind of piecemeal what you are prescribed here in New Hampshire, but at a lower cost in another state. Are you hearing that there's cost differentials that are impeding getting, being able to maintain prescriptions?
Well, the issue is, yes, you can go to adjacent states, but some states, the one to our east, do not regulate their product anywhere near as well as we do. And that is a bit of a concern. Second, they may not be able to get precisely the thing they want, and many of them may be going to an adult use store, or what we often call recreational stores, where there really is not necessarily very good regulation, not good labeling, no education. And of course, many people will just buy it on the black market, which is, they have no idea what they're getting. I mean, somebody's going to say, oh, it's this, it's that, but there's no testing, there's no certification, there's no testing for contaminants, there's no guarantee that what you're getting actually is what you want. And that is a real problem. I mean, think if you went and bought your blood pressure medicine sort of on a black market, and who knows what's really in it. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't do that. So that's the problem, is it's a matter of safety. And also, one of the things that TCMOB has done a lot of work on in the last several years is the warnings and explicit information for patients about the risks of cannabis in various settings, so that patients can be well educated, because they need to know these things.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Kate Pry, you gonna change your mind? You were in, you were out, you're staying out. I was just teasing with you. I knew you weren't gonna come. I saw it crossed in, crossed out. Does anyone else wish to testify on 485? Sure. Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, for the record, my name is Keenan Blum, and I'm the president and CEO of Granite Leaf Cannabis. I'm grateful to Senator Pearl for bringing SB 468 forward. The bill would allow ATCs to operate one greenhouse each, subject to robust regulations and restrictions. SB 468 is important to our team because we are trying to make therapeutic cannabis as affordable as possible for patients who rely on us. This is not a profit motive, it is an affordability motive for patients. Currently, ATCs are only allowed to grow indoors, and that is the most expensive way to grow cannabis or any plant. Indoor cultivation requires a great deal of electricity for high-intensity lighting, and then even more electricity to control the temperature and humidity in an indoor environment. It would be very beneficial if we could grow some of our cannabis using natural sunlight instead of electricity, and if we can do this, and we can do this if we receive your approval to operate a secure and well-regulated greenhouse that is essentially the same thing we're doing, but with a clear roof that allows sunlight in. If any of you are concerned about the security of a potential greenhouse, I think it's important to understand that every ATC cultivation location and location in New Hampshire is subject to stringent, detailed security requirements, including video cameras in every space and every view where cannabis is being produced or handled, multiple security systems running constantly with backups in every area. And any greenhouse cultivation location would be subject to these same rules, in addition to any new rules that are deemed to be appropriate for greenhouse cultivation by our regulators. Like the previous bill, this bill would help us fulfill our mission and provide affordable, high-quality therapeutic cannabis products to New Hampshire patients. I hope you will support SB 468. If you have any questions, I would be very happy to answer them.
Thank you. Yes, Senator Ennis.
Thank you, and thank you for taking my question. If I wanted to visit your facility, could I just pop in and visit your facility?
No. So other than ATC agents or necessary contractors, we can't let anybody in, senators included, without approval of the Department of Health and Human Services.
So, and that's the policies that you run your business by now. And do you expect that to be any different with the greenhouse? Could I just come pop into the greenhouse if I wanted to?
Absolutely not.
And my second question is, who's your electrical provider?
Eversource.
Eversource.
And, you know, for perspective, our electrical bill, which is primarily related to the lighting and then cooling and dehumidification in the grow rooms, is about $25,000 a month. A month. And the cost that goes along with that for dehumidification requires propane usage, the way it's set, or additional electric usage. So our total electrical bill for that facility, utility bill is about $40,000 a month, and almost all of that is related to cultivation. That would be extremely less in a greenhouse situation.
Great.
Thank you, Senator Reardon.
Thank you. You need that gas pipeline from Pennsylvania. No, it would help the electric bill. They'd both help you. Anyways, thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to testify in the bill? Seeing none, that ends for 68. Or 85. 61. I don't know. I can't know. Senator Lang, always a good day when I can see you. You're going to introduce 485 for us. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Senator Tim Lang from Senate District 2 of the Great Lakes region of the state of New Hampshire. I'm introducing Senate Bill 485. 485 is a bipartisan, bicameral bill with both Republican and Democrat sponsors, as well as House and Senate sponsors. However, what I'm going to tell you is the bill is all irrelevant now. The federal government, back in 2018, passed the Farm Act of 2018, and in it legalized trace amounts of THC to be allowed in hemp-derived products. The original intent of that law was ropes and clothing. If you did it, you made rope or clothing out of hemp and it had trace amounts of THC, you wouldn't be deemed in violation. However, some very smart entrepreneurs realized they could make beverages and other products with it that would have a small amount of THC in it and be able to use it legally. However, the federal government, when it passed the reconciliation bill in November, closed that loophole. And so therefore those products are no longer allowed, but there is still some work that needs to be done in this general area. And so what I'm going to ask is, while you have 16 pages of irrelevancy in front of you at this point, I'm going to ask you to hold the bill. I've been working with Mark and Danielle over at New Hampshire Liquor Commission. They would like to use this as a housekeeping bill to clean up some matters they have. And I will do all the work on the amendment to get it to you, so there's no added work I'm asking of the committee other than just to hold the bill until I can get the amendment drafted.
Sounds reasonable to me, Senator. Thank you very much for your testimony. Seeing no questions, have a great day. Sue Homala. Oh, great. Does anyone else wish to testify on 485? Are we all set? We are all set. That'll end the hearing on 485. Senator Fenton coming? If he's not coming, Senator Reardon, but we'll give him a minute, or they're checking. Real easy just to introduce it. He's here, he's coming. Okay, we'll give him a minute. The world does revolve around you, Senator.
Thank you for waiting. Keep you guys in suspense
Yes.
always.
So Senator, introduce 651 for me. Good to see you.
Absolutely. It's always good to be back here in Judiciary.
Good to have you, sir.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, for the record, I am Senator Donovan Fenton. I represent District 10, and I'm here to introduce Senate Bill 651. Is it 651? Yes.
Yes.
Let me just double check I got the right form. Yeah, it is. All right. Sorry about that. New Hampshire is now the only state in New England that has not legalized and regulated cannabis. Every single one of our neighbors has figured this out. Meanwhile, we're still pretending prohibition is working while people just drive to Massachusetts, Maine, or Vermont, buy legally, and bring it back home anyway. We get all the downside and none of the upside. And the world is changing around us. This past year, President Trump signed an executive order directing the Attorney General to move marijuana from a Schedule I to a Schedule III drug under the Controlled Substance Act. That means cannabis is no longer treated like heroin. It's now treated more like medications such as Tylenol or testosterone. And that is a huge shift. It's a clear signal that even the federal government now recognizes what most Granite Staters already know. Cannabis is not the same category as the most dangerous drugs, and it should be handled with a smart and regulated adult approach. So the question for New Hampshire is simple. Do we lead or do we keep falling further behind? Right now, we're losing tens of millions of dollars every year because people are buying cannabis across the border. That's money that could be going to school funding, substance use prevention, mental health care, and public safety. Instead, we're exporting it to other states and then turning around and raising property taxes to make up the difference. Senate Bill 651 is a responsible, New Hampshire-style way to fix that. This bill doesn't just legalize cannabis and walk away. It sets up real, thoughtful, well-regulated system, just like alcohol. You have to be 21, you need ID, you can't sell to kids, you can't drive high, products are tested, labeled, and tracked, law enforcement gets better tools and more resources, and the revenue actually goes where people want it to go. Half the remaining revenue goes straight to the Education Trust Fund to stabilize school funding and lower property taxes. Big investments go to substance use prevention, treatment, recovery, and mental health services. Public safety gets funding for impaired driving enforcement and drug recognition experts, and we even tackle long-term costs by paying down the retirement system liability. Right now, prohibition isn't protecting kids, it isn't stopping use, and it isn't saving money. It's just wasting law enforcement's time, hurting people with low-level charges, and throwing away revenue we desperately need. 651 says, let's be adults about this. Let's regulate it, tax it, keep it away from kids, invest in prevention and treatment, and use revenue to support our schools and communities instead of sending it to Massachusetts. New Hampshire prides itself on common sense and personal responsibility, and I believe this bill does exactly that. So thank you for your time. Happy to take any questions.
Hi, Senator. Thank you for bringing forth the legislation. It's always an area that's topical. Are you aware that 30% of our accidents on the roads involve poly-use? Our accidents are going up. Our death rate on the road is up a third. And most of the time it's a poly-use. It's usually a marijuana product and drinking. So people know if I have 3 or 4 drinks, I'm going to be 0.08, then they can have, but if I I'm going to have a drug recognition expert come out, and everyone's under the impression that they can get away with smoking on top of, say, 4 drinks. And with the rates going up of accidents, with the death rate going up, mostly due to this poly use or part of the problem. Are you not afraid we're going to exacerbate the situation more by having more drugs prevalent?
Oh, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the question, and that you raise a very serious point. You know, you and I sit on the Governor Highway Safety Task Force, and our mission there is to make sure public safety is number one, make sure our roads are safe, our kids are safe, our families are safe, and our constituent safety is paramount. Other states have done this. They've been able to handle legalizing marijuana. They haven't had the same uptick of 30%. You know, that being said, there is funding in here to help law enforcement deal with that, to recognize that, training in that. And this bill isn't giving carte blanche to people to smoke and drive. It's legalizing it so that we can regulate it and make sure it's safe for everyone here in New Hampshire.
You and I are both concerned dads. I know your guys are a little younger and a little, I know
Can't drive yet.
you have the car dealership, but you haven't given them the cars yet or the keys. Are you afraid that we're not going to give, if once the kids see the big billboards, maybe we'll regulate that, we won't have billboards. Once it's legalized here, do you not think that we're sending a signal to kids, green light, it's okay to do it?
Mr. Chairman, another good point. You know, our children are the most important thing in the world to us. And right now, there is ways to access marijuana. Well, you know, I live in Keene, right on the border between Vermont and New Hampshire. You can drive 10 minutes across the border and pick this up. So there's nothing stopping them from doing that now. The only difference is you have to be 21 years old to purchase marijuana. You know, just like alcohol. You know, we don't want our kids drinking. There's age limits. You have to have a license, and the same thing applies to this.
Thank you for answering my questions. Any other questions? Seeing none. Thanks for coming in.
Always a pleasure, folks.
Always a pleasure. Keep it selling me those cars. No, they don't. Matt Simon. Hi, Matt. You said you'd be a man of few words, so
I will, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
thank you.
My boss had to go back to work, so you get to deal with the B team. For the record, Matt Simon, Granite Leaf Cannabis. Support the bill. I'm not under any particular illusions about where this bill is probably going, but wanted to say just a few words in favor of the overall approach. Obviously, I support adult use legalization. Don't need to tell you why. We've been through that many times before. I just wanted to point out this particular bill takes what I consider to be a very thoughtful approach to cannabis regulation. I often say that the secret to this issue is having a healthy balance between increasing personal freedom and imposing effective regulation in governments. Prohibition isn't a form of regulation, it's an abdication of regulation. So I view this bill as a very thoughtful approach. It was based on the experiences of other states. And in particular, it takes a very thoughtful approach to integrating the therapeutic cannabis program. If we are going to legalize adult use cannabis, it's very important to me and to a lot of other people that we build on the successes of the successful program we do have, that patients are not left behind in that transition, and that the three companies and their teams that have put all of this effort into building a credible and respectable therapeutic cannabis program are not simply shoved to the side to make room for other operators and a different model. So this bill takes that into account. It would allow existing businesses to serve the adult use market. It would allow a lot of new businesses to come in and be regulated as well. So if you want to get into those details, I'm willing. I have a copy of the bill here, but I just wanted to say a few brief words in support.
Thank you. Quick question. You'll know right off the top of your head. How many states are legalized? How many aren't?
24 states.
Have legalized, fully legal, or relatively. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Sue Mulla.
Hello, for the record, Sue Hamola from Smart Approaches to Marijuana. I will not start in with my normal song and dance about how legalization does not benefit states. I'm just going to cut right to the chase and say that there's been a lot of comparisons to our neighboring states, but let's talk about what's really happening in our neighboring states. Vermont has the highest rate of 13 to 7-year-olds who have cannabis use disorder. Maine is struggling under hundreds of illegal marijuana farms. They're black market marijuana farms right now that they can't get a hold of. And then in Massachusetts, even the voters in Massachusetts are actually having legalization regrets. This past December, the Coalition for Healthy Massachusetts submitted 74,000 signatures to put a question on the 2026 state ballot to repeal the commercial sale of recreational marijuana, which is kind of shocking sounding. This effort actually needs to be approved by their legislature, but if their legislature fails to support the effort, then the coalition can override this decision by collecting 12,000 more signatures. All across the country, states are actually having legalization regret because they've seen what it's done to their populations. In the testimony I'd given you, there's a chart in there, and I apologize, but I failed to put the title of the chart on there. But Gallup has been tracking the public perceptions and attitudes regarding marijuana's positive impact on society and its users. And for the first time from 2022 to 2024, what was going in a positive direction where people thought it was positive for society and positive for users, that's inverted in every category now that they measure. That means all of U.S. adults are starting to those attitudes are starting to come down, and they're starting to view marijuana as a negative force on society and its user. And I just thought that was quite noteworthy because in every category that perception was inverted now. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Seeing none, thank you. Does anyone else wish to testify who I didn't notice on the list, or? Come on, Kate, good to see you. Afternoon, Kate. How you doing today?
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Happy New Year. I have not seen many of you since the New Year's. I'll be very quick. I have handed in a lot of information, probably more than you need. As you know, I'm Kate Fry. I'm the Vice President of Advocacy and New Futures. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that works to improve the health and wellness of New Hampshire residents. We work with stakeholders and prevention partners to reduce alcohol and drug problems in our state. New Futures believes it's imperative to get cannabis commercialization policy right from the start. So as many of you may know, we have created our principles for cannabis policy and regulation, and we look at each bill with those principles in mind. Optimal policy for our state really has to utilize the best scientific and evidence to reduce public health harms. So we look at whether the bill protects children and youth, promoting social justice, protecting public health, ensuring appropriate funding for cannabis regulation. We are pleased to see that many of these principles are fulfilled in this bill. However, there are some gaps that we would be concerned about and would want to have amended around protecting children and youth. While the bill does allude to creating THC potency limits through rule, we would like to see that in statute, replicated by other states that have done that. And also the serving size is very large in this bill. It's 20 milligrams per serving. I think the average is 5 to 10 in other states around us. We'd like to see promotion of social justice opportunities for those who have been impacted by the war on drugs in the past. Protecting public health and population health. We have advocated that public health and prevention partners are at the table at the advisory board or the commission. That lacks in this bill. And then lastly, ensuring appropriate funding for cannabis revenue directed towards prevention, treatment, and recovery. While there is some, it's only 10% and it's capped at $25,000, whichever is less. So it really does need to be prioritized for us to reduce the harms. So I tried to make it easy as possible for you. I have a kind of a quick snapshot of what is in this bill. Yellow, green is yes, it's in the bill. Yellow needs a little bit of work. Red, it's not in the bill. And then I provided additional language in the side-by-side. So if you want to move into the direction, you would have that language as well. So we just would oppose this bill as written, but we would be happy to provide language to meet all of the principles.
Thank you, Ms. Fry. Questions? Yes, Senator Elshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Fry. It's good to see you.
Good
Happy
to
New
see
Year
you
to you. So thank you so much for this side by side. This actually really really puts things into perspective. And I understand, bless you, understand that there are revisions that New Futures would like to see in a future, in as an amendment or in a future policy proposal. The ones that are in red. I'm curious about the start of the regulatory process, place public health
Yep.
authorities in leadership roles. Is that what you're talking about putting people on the
Exactly.
commissions? Ah, got it. Okay. Thank you. That clarifies that. And then I missed in the bill there, I don't think there's anything for community reinvestment other than prevention work and addiction recovery help. So what does that look like for, it's the first time I've ever seen it asked of a bill that would generate revenue for the state. So
Yeah, I think this is something when we look at just making sure we prioritize equity, social justice. Some states have looked at this about whether it's creating a community reinvestment fund that would give back to communities that traditionally have been impacted by the war on drugs. It could be other licensure opportunities. We've noted in bills in the past here that there hasn't been anything in this area. So these are some suggestions from other states, and I put language in there for that. And you are absolutely correct. I was referring to the commission that's created for this. In earlier versions, there was either an advisory board, and that advisory board did have public health and prevention representation. There is no advisory board in this bill. It could be that there's a concern that there'd be too much regulation, but they would only act in an advisory measure to the commission.
Yes.
So, like New Hampshire and the population of New Hampshire, there's been change in looking at the legalization of cannabis. And if I recall, many years ago, and I won't put a date on that, but nonetheless, New Futures, if I remember correctly, was not a proponent or supporter. But now I think, it sounds like New Futures is ready to find that space where we can do it safely. Is that where the policy, where the policy is coming from New Futures? Is that like we see this as something that's coming and let's get a hold of it and do it properly?
Yeah, so there's been an evolution of our position. Probably 8 to 10 years ago, when many states hadn't moved in that direction yet. Those states hadn't had any public health in their statutes. Public health organizations in the beginning hadn't weighed in as much. You really saw that change with a lot of states who regulated later and understood the issues like prevention and the issues they were having around poisoning of young kids from the products and things like that, and began to put those measures in. So probably about 5 years ago, what we moved to was a principle-based statement that if principles are fulfilled, we would not oppose it. We would not oppose it. I want to clarify, like alcohol bills and tobacco bills, we are never here supporting a bill that increases access to youth. We may get to a position that we don't have to oppose. That is the intent behind these principles as well.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Fry. Seeing no other questions, have a great day.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to testify on 651? Seeing no one, that'll end the hearing. Senator Fenton, I don't want to hold you up, so you come on down. You're my two committees, I do seem to see you on, which is a good thing. Okay, Senator, tell me about 461.
It's just the opposite end of the spectrum. Well, Chairman Gannon and members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, thank you for having me back. For the record, I am Senator Donovan Fenton still, and I represent Senate District 10. And I'm here to introduce Senate Bill 461, a bill that makes one simple but important change to our hemp law. 461 clarifies that total THC concentration includes not just Delta 9 THC, but the sum of all THC variants, including, and bear with me, tetrahydrocannabinolic acid. There's someone behind me, but we're going to call it THCA for now, okay? So THCA. This brings New Hampshire's law into alignment with recent federal changes that are scheduled to take effect later this year. And this matters now, right now, because some New Hampshire retailers are selling unregulated high THC cannabis products labeled as THCA flower and THCA concentrates under the guise of being federally legal hemp. Since THCA converts to THC when heated, these products are functionally the same as marijuana, but without any of the rules, testing, age restrictions, or consumer protections as we expect. Mr. Chairman, as you are, I'm sure, fully aware, I support legalization and regulation of cannabis for adults 21 years and older. But I believe strongly that we should do it the right way, and that means safer, responsible legalization with strong guardrails that protect public health and safety. So regardless of where we stand on legalization, I hope we can all agree that that high THC products should not be sold in New Hampshire with zero regulation. If we're going to legalize cannabis, and I believe we should, we need to do it responsibly with strong regulatory framework that keeps products tested, labeled, and out of the hands of kids. Until then, we should not allow a loophole that creates a Wild West cannabis market with no rules at all. It's a simple fix, and a necessary fix. I believe that closes obvious loopholes and supports a safer, more responsible path toward legalization. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and happy to take any questions.
And it's probably too loose a question. I've been told by especially Manchester police, there's a lot of bodega type things selling packaged, they'll have an off name, instead of gummies, it'll be whatever. And they're sold commonly throughout, especially the cities. But when they test them occasionally, they tend to be much higher in potency. I don't know about the weight requirement part. Is this going to address any of that? So you go into a lot of stores in Manchester, they have some stuff under the counter, which is another problem. But the stuff on the walls will be, Skittles will be Biddles or whatever, and they're selling it and they're very mislabeled and misleading as to the potency. Is this going to help catch that at all?
That is a very loose question, Mr. Chairman. No, I'm kidding. You're going to see the next speaker. He actually has pictures of some of the products we're talking about, and I think it addresses exactly what you're referring to.
Thank you for your testimony.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure to be here in Judiciary. Thank you, folks.
You guys all set? All set. Thank you. Matt Simon. You don't have to stay. But you're welcome to. I'm not going to exec. Oh, I thought, okay.
Okay, good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman. For the record again, Matt Simon, Granite Leaf Cannabis. And I'm back here to talk to you about my least favorite topic, hemp-derived THC, and how to deal with that. So, as you know, I support having a responsibly regulated market for cannabis and THC products. What has happened federally under the guise of hemp does not fit my standards for that. And as you've heard, the federal government Congress has changed law that will set to take effect next November, updating the definition of hemp and making a number of other changes federally. A few years ago in this same room, we talked about a previous bill that did become law that closed one of the loopholes. We often talk about the loophole. It's actually 3 loopholes. The first loophole was when companies started converting CBD into THC variants, Delta 8, Delta 10, a bunch of other ones. And we talked about that. We closed that loophole, I think, pretty effectively. Those products are clearly illegal under New Hampshire law currently. The second loophole is what I call the edibles or the beverages loophole. It's also known as the dry weight loophole. So you can have a bunch of THC in a product as long as it's bulky enough that it's under that 0.3%, and then it's technically hemp. So we do see edible products and beverages that Congress certainly didn't intend to legalize, but are a big part of the market. This bill doesn't address the edibles question or the beverages question. What it does, in my opinion, is closes the third loophole. The third loophole is just well, we're a hemp company and nobody stopped us from doing that first thing. And nobody stopped us from making the edibles that are 100 milligrams, but technically legal. So what if we just grow marijuana and produce marijuana concentrates and sell them and call it THCA instead of calling it marijuana or cannabis? I wonder if anybody will stop us. Well, the market is now flooded with these products that are THCA products. So the handout is, there's a national company that operates 3 retailers in New Hampshire. My point is not to call them out specifically, but since they have all their products on the website, it's really easy for me to show you what they're selling. In the regulated cannabis industry, we work with total THC. Our labels will say total THC. In the case of this product, the first page, this is a flower product, and it says THC 0.1% and THCA 29%. We would call that total THC of 29.2%. And anybody would be able to recognize that as a pretty potent flower product. But in the hemp market, this is just THCA flower. It's less than 0.3%. And it really is functionally not any different than cannabis flower that you would buy in an adult use dispensary. So that's the flower, but they also have more potent products. See the snow caps on the next page are flower that is coated in THCA isolate. So it's about 54% THC. They have the hash product listed next is about 70% THC. And then you have the diamonds, which are a true isolate product, 99+% THC. And I included a Facebook post from where this company was advertising their products in New Hampshire. And I have another one in my pocket that I picked up in North Carolina. I was there over the holidays visiting family. North Carolina doesn't have medical cannabis. They don't have decrim even. It's still a crime to possess cannabis products. But like a lot of other states, they have dispensaries everywhere. And the dispensaries are predominantly selling THCA products. This is a THCA vape product. Looks like any other vape pretty much. As for the question of whether it's potent or not, well, I think it's answered by the packaging. It says right on the side, potent as, and there's a 4-letter word that begins with F. So I'll let you guess what that is. They're not hiding what this is. And that's our THCA market that's operating under the guise of hemp. This bill doesn't include an enforcement mechanism. It doesn't include a lot of details. I think the intention is just to make it very clear in New Hampshire law that THCA is considered THC, and that in fact we do understand that heating up THCA causes it to become THC, and that that's not a good loophole. So just looking for clarity under New Hampshire law. I don't think it solves the entire problem, but I think it gets us a long way in the right direction. Happy to take any questions.
No, I think we're good. Thank you very much. That was good. Sue, one more time.
For the record, Sue Hamola, Chairman, Sam, New Hampshire. I want to thank Senator Fenton and the co-sponsors for bringing this bill up and this topic. And I also want to thank Matt Simon for that great explanation. That was very good. The only comment that we have here is Sam, New Hampshire supports the addition of THCA to the definition of hemp. The 2 recommendations that we have is that there is a hemp definition according to federal legislation passed in 2025. I submitted testimony that has a link to that, page 129. My recommendation is that we should mirror federal language and not come up with something that's different than federal language. It would be more the federal definition of hemp is a little bit more thorough when it comes to that. Secondly, there's a spelling error. Not surprisingly, THCA is a complex word, but I already had mentioned to Senator Fenton that it is spelled incorrectly in this bill and it could be updated. Thank you. That's all I have. Any questions?
Nope,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much. Kate Fry. Take us home, Kate.
Okay, I will, and I'll be very brief. Again, Kate Fry from New Futures. We are in support of SB 461. We are very grateful to the sponsors for bringing this bill forward. It is a step in the right direction to fortify the ban we have on intoxicating hemp products in New Hampshire. So there's a series of bills this year that we will support that really will try to close loopholes and address how industries try to market and advertise to youth. So industries have used loopholes to sell products, like definitional loopholes, hemp-derived versus cannabis, unregulated products like kratom, deceptive marketing, and regulatory gaps. So we are very supportive of this bill. This is one of the 5 that we are supporting in a campaign that addresses these loopholes. And so if they're labeled as compliant, then they're ignoring some of the other potent forms of THC that might be in a product. So 461 requires measuring the total THC concentration and including all forms. So for these reasons, we ask the committee to vote in support of SB 461. I provided my testimony and some language, an article about the issues around the gaps with the federal law.
Thank you, Ms. Fry. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Does anyone else wish to testify who didn't get a chance? Yeah, chief back. Oh, you're giving me more, thanks. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Danielle Elson. I'm Deputy Chief with New Hampshire Liquor Enforcement. I just wanted to support your question before. This definition will definitely help with some of the products we are narrow the products that we are seeing in the industry. We encountered a lot of these products in our convenience stores in New Hampshire. We're in the process of trying to create some legislation to narrow that down and help with this, but this definition will definitely help that.
Great. You're all set. Thank you. And I think that does it unless I see another hand. That'll close the hearing. Thank you all for coming today.